Brother Paul O'Donnell is a religious superior of the Franciscan Brothers of Peace, headquartered in the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis. The Franciscan Brothers of Peace originated within the Catholic Right to Life movement and consider the promotion of the gospel of life to be their primary and central charism. Brother Paul received his bachelor's degree in communications from the University of St. Thomas in 1982. He was the primary caregiver to Brother Michael Gaworski, their severely disabled founder, for over 12 years, until Brother Michael's death on August the 28th, 2003. Because of their own experience, Brother Paul and the Franciscan Brothers of Peace were at the forefront of the battle to save the life of Terry Schiavo. Brother Paul became the official spokesperson for Terry's family and spoke out on Terry's and their behalf before worldwide media. Brother Paul currently serves as the chairman of the board of the Terry Schiavo Life and Hope Network based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He has been active in pro-life ministry since 1973, and currently he serves as the president of the Pro-Life Action Ministries based in St. Paul, Minnesota. He continues to serve as pro-life media consultant and appears on many Catholic, Christian, and secular radio shows, and remains a firm pro-life contact for many national media outlets.
First of all, thank you for coming here, and I hope that some things I say may be helpful to you. This workshop is really based on the lived experience of the Franciscan Brothers of Peace. Brother Michael Gaworski was our founder, and we were very active in the Right to Life movement for many, many years. And we used to come to the National Right to Life conventions and give workshops. Brother Michael was an outstanding spokesman for life. He appeared on EWTN, Mother Angelica's Live. He spoke all around the country. He was a very charismatic and gifted individual. And in 1991, while we were involved in ministry, a hospice ministry to people dying of AIDS, something happened to him, and he came down with a sudden bacterial pneumonia, caused his lungs to go into shock and caused cardiac arrest, and he was rushed to the hospital, and the doctors, after a day or so, labeled him to be in a persistent vegetative state. It's that lived experience that prompted this workshop that dedicated to his memory that the brothers have done for 17 years. And more we find that people experience what we've experienced in the healthcare industry. We decided that we were going to care for Brother Michael. When we set out to do so, we were met with opposition. The first thing the doctors told us is that he was going to have lung infections every 6 weeks, and it would be perfectly okay not to give him antibiotics. We had church leaders even tell us that it would be okay to remove food and hydration because this would be burdensome treatment, and it would be okay not to continue to feed him. We were told if we were going to care for him that we should put him into some type of nursing home. And we tried to do that, but no nursing home that was of any good quality was willing to take him. We tried a Catholic nursing home, and they only care for the elderly. Brother Michael was 32 years old when this happened. We tried another Catholic facility, the same thing. They only cared for the elderly. Finally, we approached the Hawthorne Dominican sisters who ran a cancer home. And they said, even though Brother Michael doesn't have cancer, he's welcome to stay here. But then Sister Luke said to me but why are you giving up on this man? Why are you willing just to push him away? And it challenged me and it convicted me that we did have the strength and the resources and the grace to care for our own founder. We did have him in a hospital. He wasn't quite ready to go home for 8 months after his injury. And we started working with him. And one day a neurologist came in and saw us interacting with Brother Michael. And he said, I would like to start up a protocol for a coma stimulation program in this hospital. I was wondering if you'd be willing to consent to have Brother Michael be our first case. And of course we said yes. And we learned a whole lot of things that most people don't know, especially when adults experience brain injury. We were educated about how the brain works, that when brain injured people have an accident or something that's happened to them to cause trauma, their responses are much slower. And it's like the old reel-to-reel tape recorders, you know, where you got one going around here. I know this is a different day and age with these things up here, but this is going around on one speed and the pickup is much slower. And so we learned if we were giving him a command, not to be touching him. If we were telling him to do things, not to have other stimulation in the room. And this brought him to a point where he could communicate by blinking his eyes to yes and no questions. Obviously, we would have hoped for more, but he reached a plateau stage. The significant thing about that is that 6 weeks after Brother Michael left and came home to our friary, that program was used on other individuals, and we know of 2 individuals that made a full recovery. And so, had we not worked and battled the insurance company and kept him in this hospital as long as we can, and worked with a wonderful neurologist, that program never would have been started. I'd like you, before I go into some of the practical things, to actually see who Brother Michael was and to hear him. And it's just, I believe it's like a 4-minute little video clip so that you can get an idea of who he was. And I'm going to pass the microphone to Brother Max. No, because it turns off the other workshop's lights. I wish I could.
It's okay.
It starts out silent.
If we are truly pro-life, if we're truly Christian, and that you and I really truly believe that what's going on inside these abortion chambers is the killing of our unborn brothers and sisters, then you and I aren't going to let one calendar month go by without spending at least 2 hours seeing Christ. I don't believe that anyone is too busy or is doing something so important or vital that he or she cannot spend at least 2 hours a month to save babies and to help women. At the very least, to avoid deaths. We've got to bring the light of Jesus. We've got to bring the light within us to these places of darkness. If you were at the funeral building, it's totally every 18 seconds in this country. A human life is crushed out every 18 seconds by abortion. The bell tolls for you every 18 seconds. Are you involved in the human race? Listen. Listen. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? No? Why not? Why can't you? Perhaps because no one is in the belfry. Why don't you go into the belfry? Take hold of the cord and pull the bell. Pull the bell, sound the alarm. There's a Holocaust going on. A silent Holocaust. There's a war going on. It's a war on the human race. There's a war going on. It is a war on helpless little people. Unborn people. Unborn babies. There is a war going on. It is a war on the most basic, fundamental human right. The right to which, if you don't have it, you don't have anything. The right to live life. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, for it tolls for you. It tolls for you.
Brother Michael was an outspoken defender of human life, but in 1991, he suffered a bacterial pneumonia and went into respiratory and cardiac arrest. This condition led to a severely brain damage. It was just about, you had the mic turned off, sorry about that.
Oh.
Sorry. It was just about 8 months after Brother Michael's death that I was speaking at a National Right to Life convention, and a young man was addressing the prayer breakfast, and it was Bobby Schindler, the brother of Terry Schiavo. And when I saw him speak and I saw the video of Terry, it clicked. I knew, I made a connection with Terry that many people couldn't. And so I went down to Florida to help the family, to be a spiritual support for them. And that was a real eye-opener on the value and dignity of human life. That we were, in our country, deciding who should live and who should die. And it was the first time in the United States history that a woman was being court-ordered, starved to death, who wasn't a criminal. It's merely that she needed a feeding tube. And this struck the hearts of the nation, the halls of the Vatican. People all around the world came to know who Terry Schiavo was. After Terry's death, 13 days of starvation and dehydration, the family decided to found an organization that would help other people. And now, every week, we get calls from people. Somebody that has a baby that's born with trisomy 18. Someone that has a mother that has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Little babies who doctors do not want to treat. Older people whether we like to realize it or not, there is a bias against the elderly in this country. And once you reach a certain age, whether that's 80 or 90, they don't want to treat. And they promote and encourage death in very, very subtle ways. And that's what I'd like to share with you, is some practical things that people face when a loved one is suddenly in a catastrophic illness, or is dying, or again, you're caring for somebody elderly. But the first thing I'd like to do, if I can, is separate two very important areas. Unfortunately, a lot of people lump them all together and say end-of-life issues. There are end-of-life issues that are very practical, such as if you've been diagnosed with terminal cancer, you have a choice whether you want to have chemotherapy or you do not. That is an end-of-life decision. You have a choice, even if you are dying and you know that you will be dying and dead in a month from now. No, you don't have to have a feeding tube. There are things, those are end-of-life decisions. But it's when death is imminent, when you're dying. Then there's the other category that I would call caring for the sick. And that's a little bit more complicated, but we have to remember that in caring for the sick, doctors are not always soothsayers. They don't know exactly what's going to happen in many situations. For example, as I told you, they said Brother Michael would develop a lung infection every 6 weeks. Yes, he developed pneumonias occasionally. People with lung conditions like that do, but it wasn't every 6 weeks. He would go 9 months to a year before having any kind of problem. Doctors sometimes want to paint the worst case scenario, not to treat this child or not to help this person. So there's that area of caring for the sick. And then there's active and passive euthanasia. In other words, where we're doing something that will bring someone's death, like with Terry Shiva, where we took her food away, her water, that's going to cause her death. That is active killing euthanasia. And it's treated, she was not treated because of her disability. And our country really accepted that, and that's where our culture was going. So there's those three areas: truly end-of-life issues, caring for the sick, and euthanasia. And we need to really educate ourselves in these areas, because unlike defending the preborn child in the womb, unlike the whole abortion issue, this gets a little gray. This gets a little murky at times. People don't always know what to do. And so the first thing that I recommend is that if you are caring for a parent, or you're married, or you're an adult in this day and age, because we don't know when things will happen to us, it is good to have some type of advance directive. Now, most states provide a living will, but in that document, it's geared towards death. It's geared towards non-treatment. It's geared to save money, and it's pretty much motivated by the insurance companies. So we need to find documents that can protect our life and use the correct language. And National Right to Life does have such a document, a will to live, and you can download it on their website and click on your state, and it will print up the document that would be legal in your state. And the reason why you want such a document is because people get confused. When you say treatment is burdensome, and the word burden is much different when we're caring for somebody and emotionally than legal burden. And when you're talking about burden in a document, you want to be careful, because that means they can stop treatment, remove oxygen. remove dialysis or anything. So you want to have that legal document. In addition to that, you want to have a healthcare proxy. Someone that knows your wishes, knows what you would want and want done. And in some cases, you may want two. And this is very, very important. The reason why you may need two is because sometimes somebody might not be available. Somebody else can't always be there. In my situation, and I talk a lot about my parents because they were a medical nightmare, but my father had 5 bypass surgeries. His first bypass surgery was when he was 41. So he had 5 bypass surgeries, 2 strokes, which eventually led him to be on dialysis and because he had total kidney failure. And about after the 5th heart bypass surgery, when he was about 75, 76, he said, "Paul, I never want to go on a ventilator again. I don't want to go on a ventilator again. I've been on it 5 times. If something happens, let the good Lord take me home." So he's in his car driving, and he goes into cardiac arrest, he has a stroke. He hits 4 parked cars, goes over the car, is in intensive care. I fly home to Omaha. The doctor tells me that the only way that he'll live is if he has a heart pacemaker put in. And I said, he doesn't want to go on the ventilator. He doesn't want to have that. And my dad turned to me and said, "Paul, I think we should, I'll do it." And he changed his mind. And the lesson of that is that we renew our driver's license every 4 years. We shouldn't just have a document, put it in the safe deposit box, and then pull it out 10, 15 years later, because how we look at things when we're 30 is different than how we look at things when we're 50 or 60. And things keep changing, and perspective keeps changing. The same situation happened with my mother. She had chronic pulmonary lung disease. And when she was 77, she aspirated, had to go in intensive care, and was on a ventilator. And after that, she said, "I don't want to go on a ventilator ever again. I don't want to." So she went back to the nursing home for about 3 months, and the same thing happened again, and she was rushed to the hospital. I get a call outstate saying that your mother is in the hospital, she's in the emergency room, and I've told her without going on the ventilator, she only has a matter of minutes. And I said she doesn't want to go on the elevator, or on the ventilator. And the doctor on the phone said, "Brother Paul, your mother has just indicated she wants to, she's changed her mind." Now she couldn't talk. She went on the ventilator, she was weaned off 4 days later. And we were sitting there, and this was the time, it was actually about 4 years ago, that Sarah Palin started coming on the scene. And so we were watching some of the news clippings, and she turned to me and she said, "You know, when they said I only had 2 minutes, I changed my mind." And that can happen. And so we need to have something in writing, but don't be so definitive. When the last thing with my mother, she developed we didn't know this, we predicted this, but she developed a urinary tract infection, and for older women and that are on medication, this can really mess up their metabolism. And she was catatonic, she was not responding. And so the doctor wanted to put her in hospice. And we asked in the state of Nebraska if there was any hospice that would continue to treat with food and hydration. And they said no. And we said we feel that she has a urinary tract infection, and that if she's treated with that, she'll get better. We've seen this before. The doctor felt that that wasn't the case. But she did get better. We insisted on it. and she did recover. My mother made a statement, and the only reason I know this is because the parish pastoral worker was in the room when the doctor came in. But prior to this, he had asked if my mother wanted to live on a ventilator for the rest of her life. And she said, of course not. And then the doctor overrode her DNR order so that she would, it would be a DNR against my father's wishes. And we had to have a full hearing of the ethics committee to get her back to full code. She did eventually die. She had to be admitted one more time. But the fact of the matter is doctors don't always know. And it's not their job to hasten death. And I'm going to play another video, and this time we're going to keep the volume on. This is a short clip, but it really states what the role the doctor should do. And to give you a little clue, this video was made, or this movie was made, the year I was born, 1959.
Who's this?
Terminal. Pneumonia.
We'll take his temperature. He's burning up.
Can't be, doctor. His pulse has been very slow.
Take it. What's his name?
Evans. Carlisle Evans.
Nothing on here.
Nothing but chart.
Dr. Snyder seen him?
Of course.
What instructions did he give?
None. He never does in these cases.
These cases?
When their time comes, doctor always lets the old ones cross over peacefully. This one won't last until morning.
What is it?
104.
Here. Were these spots on him when Dr. Snyder examined him?
Yes, sir.
Lie to bed.
But doctor.
Lie to bed. Bed.
Dr. Marsh, this is my patient. What are you doing? I want 2 ambulatory mycetine and some oxygen.
Doctor, I have my ward.
Don't argue with me until I want them. Telephone my wife, tell her to get here right away. This man has typhoid. We can't waste any time. Now, Marsh, I don't know what you're trying. Stay out of the way. I'm trying to hide from you. Don't make that call, Bill. I'm trying to head this hospital, and I'm ordering you to stop disrupting. Dr. Snyder, you've exposed this whole hospital to typhoid. That's bad enough. But it's unbelievable that you would deliberately let a patient die. That's an old man. He's going. There's nothing anybody can do. You're a doctor. You've no right to make that decision. You're supposed to keep him alive. Shot. Where are the blocks? We got it. You're wasting your time. I can always tell. He'll go before 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Get out of here, Snyder, before I kill you. You're insane.
The reason I show that clip is because of the line, you're supposed to keep him alive. You, as a doctor, you don't have the right to make those decisions. And that's what's changed in our healthcare system today, is doctors are making decisions for family members. And if they don't, they can't coerce or they can't persuade a family to make a certain decision, then they're brought before ethics committees. And the family has to be prepared to fight for their loved ones' lives. And this is the sad reality of what's happening in healthcare today. I got a call probably 8 or 9 months ago, and it was from a woman whose father, the hospital wanted to put him into hospice and just keep him there until he died. I said, well, does he have a terminal illness? No. Is there any problem? Is he in a wheelchair? Is he mobile? Oh yeah, he walks all around, you know, he's fine. And I said, well, why do they want to put him in hospice? You know, is he able to eat or what's going on? And she says, well, he falls down a lot. I said, well, how old is he? Well, he's 94. Well, he was okay and healthy, but because he was 94, put him in hospice, not treat. He was in the hospital for a simple medical condition, and they wanted him to go to hospice. We hear this time and time again. And scare tactics that sometimes the elderly are very, very vulnerable. For example, they'll ask if you want a do not resuscitate order, and they'll explain to someone, but if we have to do it, we're going to have to we might break your ribs, okay? Now, for an elderly person, the thought of somebody doing CPR and breaking their ribs, that's kind of an emotional thing. But that doesn't always happen, and it's a scare tactic. In fact, going back to my mother and before my father died, we were in that ethics committee meeting, and this palliative care doctor was saying, you know, if we do CPR, her ribs may break, and of course my one sister got all emotional and saying, I don't want mom's ribs broken, and my older brother, who's very outspoken, turned to my dad, the one that had 5 heart bypass surgeries and all this. Dad, with all the stuff you've had and everything, have your ribs ever been broken? No. But it's a scare tactic. And the elderly are just as vulnerable and can be preyed upon the way a 3 or 4-year-old child can. And that's the scary thing. The vulnerable. We know people that have made decisions who were carrying a child that would have some difficulties in life, some severe difficulties in life, and the doctors encouraged them to abort the child, and they wouldn't. And so when that child's born with trisomy 18, doctors don't want to treat. They don't want to treat. And they let patients like this bleed out, just not treat them. And this is happening every day in the United States of America, in our hospitals, hospices, and nursing homes. And it's weeding out the undesirables, those who should not, quote, be alive or treated. And that's exactly what the T4 program did in Nazi Germany, is weed out the undesirables. So we have a heavy situation before us, especially concerning our new healthcare mandate and what's going on in the country. It's going to get worse. If this is happening now, it's going to get worse. And people are going to be denied treatment, just like the baby Joseph case in Canada. And that was a case that I worked on, and the baby was 13 months old, was on a trach, had an undiagnosed neurological illness. The family knew the child would probably die. They wanted to remove the ventilator, have a tracheotomy performed, and have him come home to die. The hospital said no. First they said he's in a persistent vegetative state, he can't feel anything, but then they reversed themselves and say it would be too painful to do it. And he would gasp, and it would be horrible, so we should just stop treatment and remove the ventilator. The parents said no. So I went to the equivalent of, it was Canadian court system, the equivalent of our Supreme Court, And they decided with the hospital, and the court ordered that the ventilator should be removed. They did this on what's in Canada called Family Day. And out of the generosity of the judge's heart, he gave them the weekend to say their goodbyes. And on Monday, the ventilator was to be removed, and they were told that the child would be given medication so it would not suffer. The family refused to comply, and we barraged the hospital with emails and all over Facebook and all over Twitter, and just barraged the hospital. And we got a group of pro-life activists together. Long and short of it, we brought baby Joseph, as we referred to him, to St. Louis and Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. He was successfully weaned off the ventilator, received the tracheotomy, and then went home, where he lived an additional 7 months before he died. But this is a reasonable request. This isn't parents in denial that they have a sick child. This isn't parents in asking for a lung transplant or a kidney transplant. This is a simple procedure. And as the, I forget his name, but he's the physician that is the Fox News channel's analysis, he said the tracheotomy actually gives comfort, because a person is having difficulty breathing, so when you open up that airway, it's the humane thing to do. But this hospital had forced this baby to have a ventilator down his nose for months and months, and the skin breakdown, and you don't do that because of infection and what can happen. This Canadian system at that particular hospital had a room, like the old emergency rooms, that the only thing that divides you from the next patient is a curtain. And there were about 12 babies, children, and this family watched one by one as children were allowed to die. And the parents, they gave in. They gave in. And it's driven by money, and it's driven by this quality of life ethics. And anytime you hear that word quality of life, you have to have your guard up. Because we all want a good quality of life, that's true. But it's a catchphrase. The same with persistent vegetative state. It's a subjective analysis. People have been labeled in vegetative states who are talking. It is a catchphrase that allows people to kill. We also have fetal care committees, such as in the state of Texas. If your loved one is in the hospital and they don't want to treat, they will notify you, and you have 10 days to find another facility. But if your loved one is termed fetal, no hospital will accept you. So it's like a death sentence. We see this all the time. We've had a 54-year-old woman that wrote on a paper that she wanted to live to keep her on the ventilator, and the doctors were going to court to remove it. Writing on the paper, I want to live, and they wouldn't listen to it. That case got tied up in court so long that she died naturally. But the thing is doctors are making the family's decisions now. And that's the scary thing. It goes back to why we need medical advocacy. We also need to realize when it's coming to caring for the sick, that there are ways to alleviate suffering. No one really has to suffer needlessly. There are obviously medications that relieve suffering, but there's other things. There's all kinds of massage therapy that helps relieve pain. They have found that people that have some spirituality, a visitor, like a member of the clergy, a priest, and they hold on to their faith or attend Mass, that they are able, that's more powerful and taps into the human spirit than even the medications. people visiting them, being a part of life, being supported. We're all uncomfortable when we start talking about our loved one's death and that they're going to die, but you know, it's a part of life, and we need to help them. I think the greatest fear that people have is when they're dying or they're very sick. They don't want to have pain, and they're afraid. And if you can calm their fears and be there and be the advocate so that they're not in pain, I have seen married couples. I witnessed a married couple that they've been married 25 years. He was 49 years old. 1 month earlier had a perfect medical history. The next month later had a massive cancer growth in the abdomen, cut off his ability to eat, was on TPN, another form of nutrition and hydration, and you know, he died after 6 weeks. But even then, we had to beg the facility to allow for the TPN. And he said to him, I want to die of cancer. I don't want to die of food and lack of food and hydration. And it was very important for him to be alive as long as he could to help his wife adjust to what was going to happen. That meant the world to him. So we need to have medical advocacy. We need to, in the pro-life movement, educate ourselves, especially in the care for the sick, the vulnerable, and disabled. We have made many gains, despite yesterday's news or the other day's news about the Supreme Court decision. We've made many gains in saving lives and bringing people to our side when it comes to abortion. And the pendulum is swinging in our direction. And not to seem overcautious or, you know, being cautious, but we can see some light. We can see we're making progress. Good things are happening. But at the same time, there's this ugly side of a death culture that people have ignored. And it went under the radar screen. Some people were aware of it, but an organization like the Hemlock Society, well, hemlock is a poison. It's meant to kill you. And they've changed their name recently to Compassion and Choices. But they carefully position themselves, doctors and nurses and social workers, to be on some of these healthcare panels. In the Catholic Children's Hospital in Tampa, Florida, has a member of Compassion and Choices on their board. Sad to say it's a Franciscan nun, but people have been sold a bill of goods. So, what can we do actively to help families in need? I would, first of all, like to make a plug for the Terry Schiavo Life and Hope Network. This is not in competition with National Right to Life. We work with National Right to Life. In fact, we work with all pro-life organizations when it comes to caring for the sick, the euthanasia mentality, and dealing with some of these cases. They have lawyers available in various states. They have knowledge and expertise. They've been through it physically, the family, and any type of help you would need, I would make a plug for that organization. I would also say, if you want, especially when it comes to care for the elderly or the dying, if you go to the website of the Catholic Medical Association, Father Tad Polaczyk, I think is his last name, has an excellent, easy to read document. Several parishes have sometimes passed them out to all the parishioners. And they're CATH med, M-E-D, .org. And you should be able to get that information. Of course, National Right to Life for the will to live. And also, to your pro-life chapters, to your organizations, we need to have more discussions about caring for the vulnerable, caring for the elderly, caring for people at this spectrum of life with the same vigor, the same resources, and the same energy as we do the preborn child in the womb. Every one of us here probably knows someone that's had an abortion or considered an abortion. Every one of you are going to know someone who's going to be put in this situation, maybe in your own family, where this becomes a great issue. And you need to be able to articulate the pro-life stance. And it's not that it's life at all costs. We can't make that great leap that we will do everything to keep this people alive, and you know, but we have to allow the patient the dignity and their family to make the decisions they want and take it out of the courts and out of the hands of doctors. And that's where we're at today. I'd just like to also conclude, and then I think we have some time for questions, don't we? Or do we not? We got 5 minutes, good. I'd just like to conclude by saying, what? Oh, we have 15 minutes, good, more. I think things are changing within the Right to Life movement, but at the time of Terry's death, and a lot of times when I travel and speak, pro-lifers don't get the connection when it comes to people like Brother Michael or Terry Schiavo. And there's an uncomfortability there. They would counsel, I mean, I've had people tell me this and challenge me. They would defend a child's right to life that was going to be born with Down syndrome or have some type of deformity. But the minute you talk about Terry Schiavo or someone like her, or she might be drooling, or, and I know these are uncomfortable things, but you think about an adult having to wear Depends or something. We just get all like, not for me, that happens to me, don't do it, I don't want to go there. And what you're doing is you're buying into the quality of life ethics, which is not based on Judeo-Christian principles. It's Hollywood, it's the media. Several years ago, there were 2 films released. One made more money than any other box office hit and received no attention from the Hollywood elite. That was Passion of the Christ. Made tons of money, huge success. But the one that got all the attention was one that glorified euthanasia. And that was the mentality. The name of me, I forget what was it?
$1 million. $1
Million Baby, yep. And so the media has tremendous influence. I don't know, I would like to take some time for questions if anybody has anything that they would like to say. If there are none, or good.
Brother, back in the day, the definition of death used to be when your heart and lungs stop. And now it's more based upon brain activity, but it's still fuzzy.
Right.
In other words, the definition of death has changed. So can you enlighten us on what is death now considered in medical terms or Christian terms?
Well, if something happens to you, like you're in a car accident and you're in intensive care, there is a criteria for what's going on. You know, can the person breathe on their own? Can they react to pain? And then of course you do the brain test, and unless it is flat, if it's totally flat, then a person is considered brain dead, and there's no way you're going to recover. But most people are not brain dead. They might be brain impaired, and people refer to Terry Schiavo as being brain dead, but she wasn't. It's just parts of the brain are scrambled up. And it is immoral to deliberately try to kill someone, even if they're, quote, brain impaired. And that's what we have, going on. The important thing is that, and this is where I say it gets gray, and then sometimes it gets hard. But sometimes being on a ventilator is a bridge. Like in my mother's case, she was off of it 4 days later, next time a week later. It can be a bridge that brings you back to a baseline health. Other times, there's complications set in, and you can legitimately, like, remove a ventilator and that. But you have to watch the signs, you have to watch what's going on, and that's where it gets a little tricky. Yes?
I just want to add something with Louisiana Right to Life. Every state has different qualifications for death.
Right.
Particularly when it comes to donations. Like Louisiana, you both no brain activity, both also cardiopulmonary activity before organs to be donated. That's rare in many states. That's just cardiopulmonary.
Right.
That is that of course organs can be donated. So it's important to know you know where your particular location, where the state is.
And I know that there has been, and these are well-educated people, that have proposed that we could use people in so-called vegetative states for organs and experimentation. And there are people that really consider that, and it's a loss of the dignity and value of life in our society today.
Another question also, what do you tell people in situations where, like this example of the lady who clearly wrote, she wanted to live, and we have that, we have voted, recommended highly, at the same time, there's the same amount of medical people sort of overlooking you. How do you?
Well,
You say?
we fight it, and sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. I have found that most families will not say anything. They go into the meeting, first they don't know the agenda that's going on. They go into the meeting, the professionals each give their take on whether treatment should go, and the person feels beaten down to begin with. So the main thing is to be prepared when you go into such meetings. Again, bring someone with you like an attorney, a pro-life attorney. Bring a medical advocate. I can't go all the way, but someone like me that's going to ask the question. I always ask the question, is this person dying? And if they say yes, well then that's a whole separate way you treat them. If they're not dying, then they need to be cared for. So how are we going to do it? And that's when you assert what I would call comfort care always, and it is a battle. I've been with families that had to fight over a CPAP form of oxygen for their loved one in the last week of life because it would make them more comfortable rather than just the nasal cannula. But we have had to take certain cases to court. Some we've won, some we haven't. We do work with the Alliance Defense League, so we have attorneys that we do work with Burke Walsh sometimes, but more in the legislative part. We have some physicians around the country that advise us, and we're getting cases all the time. We've had some good wins, but we've had quite a few losses. But it's very intimidating. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced going into a meeting like that. You really?
Does having citizens or lobby Congress or the Senate help at all in these life or death situations? Like I called the Senate numerous times on behalf of Terry.
Well, right now we have everything. I mean, there's the whole abortion side and the contraceptive side of the healthcare mandate, but there's also, and Sarah Palin wasn't far off. There are death panels. There are death panels now. That's all they're doing is deciding whether to treat or not. And 99% of the times, it's not to treat. It's only the ones they treat where the family challenges the system.
Do you have any suggestions on how to change change thinking in the healthcare community, how to impact opposition?
Well, we've met with opposition. You're from Louisiana? I believe at one time there was a form of an Incapacitated Persons Act that was on the table that would basically say if someone doesn't have an advance directive stating otherwise, that food and hydration would normally be given. Somehow, we would like to lobby for something like that. It's not saying that you have to have a feeding tube or you have to do this, but if all of a sudden someone is like Terry Schiavo or Brother Michael and there's no clear directive, that the compassionate thing would be to provide food and hydration. And I think we need to, one of the things that we would like to do at Terry's Life and Hope Network is to open up facilities for the disabled, that when the nursing homes and especially the nursing homes, no longer want to provide services like physical therapy or range of motion and that we want to have a place where they can come and we'll give them that treatment. And we've seen cases where a facility we visited in Long Island where someone was in a so-called vegetative state for 8 years and today is talking and has made not a full recovery, but is functioning, is making crafts, goes to this facility every day. But the nursing home he was in, refused treatment, physical therapy. We have a lot of soldiers in the United States, the military, where these men are coming back with brain injuries and they don't want to treat. And again, Terry's Life and Hope Network has met with officials at the Pentagon that are very interested in the work we're doing because there's a whole nother class of people that are going to be denied treatment. And we've had cases where we've had to defend the rights of people that have won the Purple Heart and are in the hospital, or in a hospital, and they don't want to give physical therapy in that.
Wow.
So it's just unbelievable what's going on. Yes, Father.
For me, that I got some cases that with the Spanish community that they don't have accidents or they don't have the money to pay or any insurance at all. And sometimes they take a hospital and when they are recovered a little bit, they need to go back for therapy or something. They don't accept them at the hospital anymore. They deny the service.
Right.
So now they going back to the parish, Father, now we can do. What we can do, how can you help us all? No? And so I feel my hands tied, so how can
Right. Well, and that's exactly why, I mean, we're actually looking at buildings to try to have a place and encourage other, states to have models that where people can go regardless of their ability to pay. It is a law that medical facilities have to treat you regardless of your ability to pay. But like you said, if they need ongoing therapy in that, it's oftentimes denied. And you really need to have, that's the case where we need really pro-life social workers that know the system and know what works. It's all up for grabs now. I mean, we don't know what they're going to be doing over the next 2 or 3 years as they review this, if it stands. But we need good social workers and people that know the system that can get people help. Yes?
What are the hospital's names for death panels? Are they fetal care committees or ethics committees?
More they go by ethics committees. And you know what the qualifications are to be an ethicist? None. There's no training to be an ethicist. You got a doctor on that committee, great, they're a doctor, they got an MD, but that doesn't mean they're ethical. You got a nurse, you got a social worker, you have a chaplain, and maybe another professional, depending on the person's need, whether it's a cardiologist or whatever. They're the ethics committee. Doesn't mean that they're moral, doesn't mean they're good, doesn't mean anything. It just means that's who they've defined. Now, in some facilities, maybe some Catholic facilities or Christian facilities, they might have somebody that has a background in biomedical ethics, somebody that's going to do the right thing. But at our county hospitals or other private hospitals or nursing homes, no, there's no criteria. It's not like your PhD or anything. Anybody can be an ethicist.
And do hospitals release that information, who's on their ethics committee?
Yes, yep, they sure do. So, any other questions? I thank you. I appreciate that very much. And, I do have some newsletters here if you're interested in our community and some of the works we do. And I appreciate your time and your attention. Thank you.